Good morning, students. We keep going with this video series where we talk about how to solve trig equations, and now we're going to do some more difficult ones, which involve more algebra skills. Okay, so we're going to go for 17, which actually as you can see, there's a lot of things inside. And besides this, they are restricting the domain between negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. So all the solutions for the variable are they're restricted between these two values. So we have a restricted domain. Okay. Now let's write 17 here. So let's write it. So we have negative 4 square root of 2 plus 7 equals 7 minus 8 sine of 4 theta plus 3 pi over 2, right? Okay, now as we have been doing before, what can we do both sides to get rid of stuff, right? Because we have to end up with something like this. Sine of theta equals something. We want to end that with something like this. That means that all this stuff here has to go to the other side. Okay, so this 7 is annoying us. Okay, that's the first thing that we want to get rid of. How are we going to kill a positive 7? Just with a negative 7, but with a subtracting 7, right? Here we go. So this is going to kill this 7, but it's also going to kill this one, right? So that means that this is going to go away. So that was an easy one. We have negative 4 square root of 2 equals negative 8 sine of 4 theta plus 3 pi over 2, right? Now this negative 8 is also annoying us to have something like this, right? So the next thing we're gonna do is divide over, because this negative 8 is multiplying, the opposite operation would be dividing. So we're gonna divide over negative 8. Okay, so that means that the negative 8 is gonna cancel here, but it's gonna go down here. Okay, now next step, we can make this two negatives positive, because two negatives dividing, they're gonna become positive. So 4 over 8, be careful with that, because a lot of people says 4 over 8, 2. No. 8 over 4 would be 2, but 4 over 8, it's 1/2. Okay, so we have square root of 2 over 2, that's what we have left from this, okay, equals sine of 4 theta plus 3 pi over 2, right? Now, this is not exactly like this, right? Because theta is not alone, but at least the sine, it's by itself, okay? So that means that even though we don't have this similar equation like this, we can still now apply the arc sine both sides. So that's going to be the next operation, arc sine both sides. So what we're going to have left is, well, arc sine and sine, they're going to cancel out here, and we're going to have arc sine on the other side. Arc sine of square root of 2 over 2 equals 4 theta plus 3 pi over 2. Now, to solve this, we could use calculator, or we could use just the unit circle, as we have been doing. If we use the unit circle, we're gonna get oh my god, here, unit circle. We're gonna get exact answer, and that's why this is useful. Because as we can see, the sine, remember, is the one on the left on the unit circle. So we have sine of 45 would be square root of 2 over 2. Actually here, the cosine and the sine, they have the same value. So but here does not. So the two answers we have is pi over 4 here and 3 pi over 4 in here. Both of these angles give us a sine of a square root of 2 over 2. Okay, so we have these two solutions in radians, pi over 4 and 3 pi over 4. So we're going to write these two answers here. We have two answers. One is pi over 4 and the other one is 3 pi over 4. But besides these answers, remember that this is a sine function and the sine function repeats for forever every 2 pi. So we're going to have these values, okay, every 2 pi. So this is how we write all solutions, okay? Now, now that we have these two solutions for arc sine of square root of 2 over 2, we're going to build two equations out of this. Again, this equals this, and this has two solutions. So that means that this equals this, and at the same time, this equals this. So we're going to write two solutions. One that's going to be this equals this, and another one that's going to be this equals this. Okay? Let's go for it. One of them is pi, I'm going to write it here. Okay, pi over 4 plus 2 pi n equals 4 theta plus 3 pi over 2. Okay. And maybe we're going to do the other one in here. We have some space in here. 3 pi over 2, the other one. Sorry, over 4. Sorry, over 4. Plus 2 pi times n equals 4 theta plus 3 pi over 2, right? Okay, so we have these two equations to solve now. The first thing we have to do in here is subtract pi. I'm sorry that this has been cut off. So here we have to subtract. We're trying to solve for theta, right? Sorry, for theta. So that means that we have to subtract this to get to the other side. So we have to do minus 3 pi over 2 both sides, right? And then that means that we have pi over 4 minus 3 pi over 2 plus 2 pi times n equals 4 theta. Okay, how do we do this subtraction here? Okay, let's do this subtraction in here. Okay, the way we subtract this is they have when we subtract fractions, they have to have the same denominator. As they do not have the same denominator, there's a way to get them have the same denominator, and the easy way here would be multiply times 2 here times 2 here. So what we get is pi over 4 minus 2 times 3 is 6 pi over 4. So now we get actually negative 5 pi, right? Pi minus 6 pi, it's negative 5 pi over 4. Remember that we keep the denominator as it is when we subtract or add fractions. Okay, so we have is negative 5 pi over 4 plus 2 pi n equals 4 theta. Last step, and I know that this is a long one. It takes a while. Yeah. And wait, because next chapters are going to be even more challenging. Now we divide over 4 both sides. Yeah, I remember when I was in college, and some exams would take like 4 pages. 4 pages long. So just to solve one equation or to do one problem. So it's how it is. Life is not easy. We need to make our algebra skills sharp. So now we divide 4 over everything. So now I'm gonna do it in here. I think it's better to do it in here so you guys understand what I'm doing. Okay, that's how I divide over 4 all terms of the equation. Okay, so that means that this is gonna cancel out. While this is gonna be, again, 2 over 4, it's 1/2. right? It's not 2, it's 1/2. And then again, this 4 is dividing here, which means that it's actually multiplying the denominator. So I have negative 5 pi over 16 plus pi over 2 times n equals theta. So here we have one solution. Took long, right? One solution. And then we're going to do the same one, and I'm going to do it quick here because we have already done it, right? So that's going to go to the other side, 3 pi over 4 minus 3 pi over 2 plus 2 pi times n equals 4 theta. And then again, I'm going to do, for this fraction, I'm going to do 2 times the 3 and 2 times the 2, so it's going to be 6 pi over 2 plus 2 pi n equals 4 theta, and then this is going to be negative 3 pi over, sorry, here this was over 4, so it's negative 3 pi over 16, sorry, over 4, I am already thinking about the 16, plus 2 pi. When you see, when you rush, you do more mistakes. That's why it's not a good thing to rush. And now I divide everything by 4, so we're gonna have now, yes, 3 pi over 16 plus pi over 2 times n equals theta. So this is the other answer. The problem is that we are not done. And we're not done because in the problem we're doing, they're restricting us the domain. They're asking us, when is this happening from negative pi over 2 to pi over 2? So that makes it even more difficult, right? So we have to think now. Well, let's see, because this is, so this needs also, let's write the domain restriction up here, okay? I'm gonna follow here. The domain restriction is negative pi over 2. Okay, so theta has to be greater than negative pi over 2, but it has to be smaller or equal to pi over 2, right? Okay, so now let's think about, let's take maybe, which one should we take first? Okay, so we have negative 3 pi over 16 plus pi over 2 times n equals theta, right? So let's see, how much will be pi over 2? So here we have a 16, right? If here we have a 16, half of a 16 would be 8. So if this would be negative 8 pi over 16, right? See, negative 8 pi over 16, that's the same as negative pi over 2, right? As we can see on the number line, let's think about the number line. This is 0, right? This is 0. And then we have negative pi over 2, and here we have pi over 2, right? So let's think about this one. This here would be in here. Well, this here, as you can see, this 3 is less than this negative 8, so that means that this would be around here. Negative 3 pi over 16, right? So that's fine. This is a solution because it's inside of the domain. But what about if I add pi over 2 to this? Because this is repeating every pi over 2, we have a solution, right? So that means that we can still add pi over 2 to this to see what we get, right? So let's add to negative 3 pi. Negative 3 pi over 16. Let's add pi over 2. What do we get? We get, so we have to make 16 the denominator, so that means that we have to multiply times 8 here, times 8 at the top, right? So now we have negative 3 pi over 16 plus 8 pi over 16, and negative 3 plus 8, this is 5 pi over 16. Now let's think, is this still inside of this domain? Well, 8 pi over 16, right, would be this. So that means that this 5 pi over 16 is around here. 5 pi over 16. So it's still inside of the domain. So this is a solution, and then this is a solution, right? So far we have, I'm gonna write it up here. Let's see, do I have a space? So I'm gonna write the solutions I have so far. I have negative 3 pi over 16, and then I have 5 pi over 16. If I add pi over 2 to this, I'm gonna be outside of the range. Okay, it's gonna be too much. So I'm gonna go now. We're not done because we still have the other solution, which is here. Negative 5 pi over 16. Negative 5 pi over 16. Is this still gonna be inside of the domain? Well, yeah, it's still gonna be, because again, it's negative 8 pi over 16. It's gonna be the limit. So we still have this negative 5 pi over 16, and then if we add pi over 2 to this, okay, if we add pi over 2, it looks like we're gonna get something. I think there's a kind of a symmetry here, right? So if we add negative 5 pi over 16 plus pi over 2, we're gonna get is times 8 here, so you're gonna have negative 5 pi over 16 plus 16 denominators, and now 8 pi, so we're gonna have here 3 pi over 16, right? So again, it's the symmetry I was talking about. So this is gonna be 3 pi over 16. These are the 4 solutions. Again, if we add pi over 2, this is going to be outside of the domain. So we have actually, as you can see, 4 different answers in this domain. I would like to check my answers using Desmos. So let's see if I'm right. So here I have Desmos, and which you can use to check. What I have in here is sine of 4x plus 3 pi over 2, which was one side of the equation, and then square root of 2 over 2. Actually, this is what I have in here, right? So when I do it, I do y, right? I could also write here y, because I think it will make it less confusing. Okay, that's okay. How do I? Okay, now, so as you can see, okay, now. So again, this is one side of the equation in here and the other side of the equation in there, right? So now let's check if this is right or not. So look, I can see that I have 4 solutions, right? Because from negative pi over 2 to pi over 2, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 solutions. Let's look at it. One is negative pi, one is negative pi over 16, which is this one here, great. The other one is negative 3 pi over 16, which is here. 3 pi over 16, this one here. And the last one, it's 5 pi over 16, which is here. So, and again, for all of this x's, y is square root of 2 over 2, which is actually 0.707, okay? So with this, we have solved this difficult equation. Again, it takes a while, as you can see. We needed a whole page full of things. So these problems, you can spend like easily 15-20 minutes for each one of them, and it's fine. The next time you will do one, you'll take less time. It's just you need time for it, okay? So again, just try hard and just practice. Thank you, guys. Have a nice day.